Hi, I'm Karan Thapar. Over the last few years, I hope you've been watching my program, The Interview on the Wire. During that period, I've interviewed doctors, politicians, businessmen, scientists, authors, and even the occasional Nobel laureate. For me, it's been exciting. I hope it's been enjoyable for you. But these, as you know, are tough times, and if this program is going to remain bold, independent, and sometimes even defiant, then I think we need your support. At the end of the day, it's a truism, but editorial independence is best defended by the viewers. So if you would like this program to remain the way it is, forthright, outspoken, and interesting, then would you consider supporting us? All you have to do is to click on the description at the bottom. But more than anything else, I hope you will continue to watch the interview. Your viewership means an awful lot to me. Hello and welcome to a special interview for The Wire. 1 month after the start of the Israel-Hamas war, we ask, what does Israel believe it's achieved? How long will innocent civilians continue to be killed? And can Secretary of State Blinken's shuttle diplomacy bring this conflict to a close? Joining me from Tel Aviv is Israel's former Deputy Foreign Minister and former Ambassador to America, Danny Ayalon. Mr. Ayalon, let me start with a simple question. After 1 month of war, what do you believe Israel has achieved?
Well, I would say so far we have just scraped the surface of the huge bunker that Hamas has made out of Gaza City to the detriment of all the Palestinians who live there. And so it is a very slow process because the IDF, what the Israeli Defense Forces are trying to do, is first and foremost is to defend the life of their own troops, but also of civilians who are not involved. This is why it's a slow process. But we are encroaching on the Hamas territory, and I believe that in a few days we will see some, hand-to-hand combat when it comes to the bunkers of the Hamas ISIS, unless they will take our offer and surrender unconditionally. That will save many lives.
But you made a very important point at the very start of that answer. You said even after 1 month of fighting, Israel has only, and your words were, scraped the surface of the huge bunker Hamas has created in Gaza. So in effect, you haven't achieved very much after 30 days. You just scraped the surface.
Yes. And this was part of the strategy, not just to do carpet bombing, not just to go in full force with a huge frontal attack, but to take it slowly in terms of, first of all, softening the targets of Hamas, and that would be the air operation, and then ground forces are following it.
Then let me put it like this. If you've only scraped the surface after 1 month, clearly Hamas is by no means defeated. Yet on the other side, Israel has killed over 9,800 Palestinians. Some 25,000 are injured. Large swathes of Gaza have been devastated and reduced to rubble. And my question is simple. At what level of death and destruction will Israel feel it's inflicted enough punishment or retribution for October 7?
Well, first and for all, we do not give any credence or credibility to the Hamas figures. And I can tell you that most of the people who are getting killed are Hamas terrorists. There are also some uninvolved. There is no denying that some innocent civilians are hurt, unfortunately, but this is another war crime perpetrated by Hamas, who is embedded inside this population. Absolutely.
I accept your point, sir, that you don't give credit to the Hamas figures, but for the sake of the audience, I should point out that Philippe Lazzarini of UNRWA, Jason Lee of Save the Children Fund, and more importantly, Washington Post, have actually said that the Hamas figures for the dead are pretty close to accurate. I know President Biden disputes it, but he's given no justification whatsoever. But I just thought I should point that out. Please continue.
Yes. So that goes in line with the same publications on announcement by Hamas that Israel hurt hospitals. If you recall, just 2 weeks ago, there was a hospital that was bombed. Of course, Hamas accused Israel, and it was unequivocally found out that it was actually a failure of launch by Palestinian Islamic Jihad. So many of the casualties.
Forgive me, sir, I don't want to keep interrupting, and I apologize, but even there are accounts from Channel 4, from the New York Times, just to name those two, that actually suggest it wasn't a misfired Hamas rocket that did it. We don't know for sure where it happened and how it happened. So the Israeli account has been questioned, maybe not fully disputed, but questioned. Again, I should just set the record straight.
Well, you could attribute it to the fog of war, and there is a fog of war. But again, I'm telling you that as painful as it is, when we talk about casualties on both sides, there's only one to blame, and this is the terrorist organization of Hamas. If they were to unconditionally surrender, then they will save a lot of lives, maybe also of their own. Israel will not stop. We cannot stop, because the attack that was actually committed on the 7th of October was akin to Pearl Harbor on the United States by the Japanese, or on 9/11 in New York by Al-Qaeda. And Hamas, just like Al-Qaeda and just like ISIS, are all supported by global Islamist jihadists who want to basically to take us all. They started with Israel first.
I take your point, sir. But let me just, for the audience, make clear the answer you're giving, so there's no dispute or discrepancy or misunderstanding. As I said, according to the Hamas Ministry of Health, 9,800 civilians have been killed, over 25,000 injured. Large swathes of Gaza is devastated. My question was, at what level of death and destruction will Israel feel it's inflicted enough punishment for October 7? And as I heard your answer, and this is what I'm clarifying, I get the feeling you're saying Israel is prepared to carry on, if need be, killing innocent civilians and destroying Gaza till Hamas is obliterated. In other words, the death toll that it takes to obliterate Hamas will not deter Israel.
Well, this is not the way we see it here. With all due respect, what we see here is defending our lives, defending the lives of our children, defending the lives of our population. This is not only our right for self-defense, there's also a duty to self-defense, and this is the way we'll look at it. All the other things are ramifications which are to be blamed on Hamas. And again, I'm sorry to bring back examples from history. But when the Nazis were to be defeated, there was no toll count every day. Same thing was with Imperial Japan. When you have evil, you have to root it out, because evil is out to take not just Israel and not just the Middle East, but the entire world. We take them at their words anymore. And all you have to do
but surely, sir, what you're doing is you're rooting out what you call the evil of Hamas at the cost of some 2 million innocent Palestinian civilians. And that's why I asked the question, are you really determined to root out Hamas, or at least its leadership, even if that means killing perhaps another 10,000 more civilians? Because that's the question the world is asking. And the reason I'm putting it to you is because the world's response to Israel will turn on how many civilians you kill to achieve this purpose. Hence my question. Are you prepared for an unlimited death toll to eliminate Hamas or its leadership?
Well, the answer is that the death toll is on both sides. You were talking about 2 million Gazan people who are held hostages. But also, I would call on you and your viewers to think about the hundreds of thousands of Israeli refugees who had to leave their homes after, they have been massacred on our border towns in the south.
But they're alive, sir. They're still alive.
They are still alive. They are being rehoused by you in hotels. They are still alive and happy. The problem is the Palestinians, up to 10,000, are dead. And
They are.
And then you answer. Let me add this.
Wait 1 second. They may be alive, but they are not happy. Their houses were destroyed. Their children were massacred. Their women, they were raped in front of their eyes. Children were killed in front of parents, and parents were killed in front of children.
I was talking about the Israelis who had to be evacuated from areas around Gaza and from areas around Lebanon. Some 25, 30,000 Israelis have been evacuated for their safety. But let me put it like this, because this is a question that is repeatedly being asked on Al Jazeera, but let's be honest, on the BBC, on CNN and Western papers. Israel has hit hospitals, schools, ambulances and refugee camps on the grounds that Hamas is either in these places or under them. Yesterday, Rear Admiral Daniel Hagari provided some evidence to back up this claim. But you know and I know that several Western media houses have said that evidence is not clinching. In response, Hamas has suggested, why not appoint a UN independent investigator? How do you, as a former deputy foreign minister, respond to this suggestion? This is a dispute where each side is accusing the other of lying. Why not then appoint the third party?
I see it with total disgust, disdain. It's a cynical, it's like the Nazis asking some international inquiry for what they did in the death camps in Germany and in Europe. This is the same thing. You have to understand. Hamas, ISIS are like Nazis. They have no regards to human lives. They have no regards to any values that we hold here dear for a better world for our children with prosperity and stability. Hamas, just like the Nazis, have to be eradicated as a relevant body and force. If we want to save, and hear me well now, if you want to save the lives of millions more, so maybe because of Hamas, we have to lose lives now. But this is to save millions upon millions of people around the world, because with Hamas, there is no future, not just to Israel, not just to the Middle East, but also to India.
You're making two important points. One we've discussed, one we haven't. The one we've discussed is you're once again indicating no matter how many civilian lives it takes to eradicate Hamas, we are prepared for that death roll because eradicating Hamas is essential. That's the point we've discussed. The second point you're making, by implication, is that the world should accept Israel's claim that when we hit hospitals or schools or ambulances or refugee camps, it was because we are absolutely sure there is Hamas in them or under them. Accept our word for it, even if the evidence we provide, as Rear Admiral Hagari provided last night, is unverified and not necessarily clinching. You're asking the world to take you on trust. What happens to people who say, why should we take you on trust?
Footage. Just see the footage. Just see the very, very hard evidence. And this is another war crime. If terrorists take over hospitals and fire out of these hospitals into our soldiers, these hospitals are no longer protected by the Geneva Convention. This is a war crime that Hamas made, and it is very legitimate to take any positions that the terrorists take and from there use to hit us. And let me tell you, where is Hamas hitting? Hamas has already launched about 10,000 rockets from Gaza. What was their target? Specifically, civil populations in Israel. This is not the other way around.
I should point out, according to the British newspaper, The Telegraph of this morning, what Admiral Hagari showed was what was said to be, and I'm underlining that word, said to be an opening of a tunnel. We don't know whether it actually was or not, because from a picture, it could be anything. And secondly, We don't know whether there was Hamas in it. We had to accept his word for it. So there is a certain measure of trust on which you're saying to people, please believe we have grounds for shooting at ambulances. But when that ambulance outside Shifa Hospital was attacked over the weekend, the footage showed patients and babies lying on the ground dead, not Hamas militants.
First of all, we have a lot of evidence that a lot of it is being staged by Hamas. I'm not saying that innocent lives are not taken, but a lot of it is staged. Hamas is still in control. I told you we're only we're only scraping the surface because Hamas, unfortunately, the terrorists of Hamas are still in control. And when they're still in control, they also are trying to control the information, the faulty information that feeds some of the newspapers and the media outlets around the world. But I will challenge you. At one day, this campaign, this war will end. And then everything will be open to the international media to come and see the underground tunnels under the Shifa hospital, to see the bunkers in all the places of schools and kindergartens and park. I don't know if you had a chance to see, but there was also a park for children that just 70 meters away from it was rocket launchers. This is the war crimes, and this is what we are dealing with. And I'm sorry to say,
I accept your point that the Telegraph has made clear that in cemeteries that were located about a close distance from the Shifa hospital, rocket launcher sites, according to the paper, were seen. And I will accept that the Telegraph would not mislead people. So the Telegraph saying this is what Haggari claimed it was is sufficient, at least for me. But let me put something else to you, because I think it's important. In the last 36 hours, 2 refugee camps have been attacked and 53 were killed. There's the Maghazi camp where 40 were killed, and the Maghazi camp is allegedly a safe evacuation zone camp. This is where Israel has been telling people in the north to move to. They move to the Maghazi camp south of Wadi Gaza, and then they're attacked there. How do you explain that?
First of all, let me set the record straight. You're talking about a refugee camp. Were these refugee camps? They were tall buildings. They were fine neighborhoods. Palestinians are not refugees. They're calling themselves refugees because they want to use it as a political ploy against Israel. What is the Hamas and the PLO saying? They saying these quote unquote refugees who are third generations born there, that they should come over and replace my home and my children's home in my own homeland. You have to understand, with this leadership of the Palestinians, it's a total war.
The point is not whether they're refugees. You may quarrel over the use of that term. Others will say it's accurate. Many believe, like, for instance, your well-known columnist Gideon Levy, that in fact Palestinians have been made refugees in their own homeland a second time. But leave that aside. I'm not talking about the use of the word refugee. I'm talking about the fact that Israel said to people in North Gaza, move south of Wadi Gaza, you will be safe. When they did, they moved to this camp called the Maghazi camp. It is definitely south of Wadi Gaza. And over the weekend, it was hit and 40 died. What I'm saying is, even in areas where you say they will be safe, whether it's the Maghazi camp, whether it's Khan Yunis, whether it's in Rafah, the bombing is continuing.
The bombing is continuing because of Hamas terrorist positions. By the way, just 2 days ago, the IDF, again, with a risk to its own soldiers, opened for 3 hours a humanitarian corridor on Salah ad-Din, which is the main route from north to south Gaza. This was open, and immediately Hamas took and hit the positions of the IDF guarding this, and also hit any civilians, any Gazans who were taking this route.
Are you forgetting what happened 36 hours before that, when you allegedly opened the coastal road, which is called Rashid Road, on which several Palestinians who were trying to go south were killed? Those scenes of people lying on the road killed with their vehicles bombed was seen by the BBC and Al Jazeera. That was 36 hours before Salah ad-Din Road was opened. So, you know, just as you are accusing the Palestinians of sabotaging the opening of Salah ad-Din Road, the rest of the world says when you opened the coastal Rashid Road, you started bombing the people who were using it.
and here I want to reiterate the point and make it crystal clear. Everyone who gets killed in Gaza is on the heads of Hamas. They are the ones, again, not only they embed themselves and fire at our population from where they are among their populations, but also they are firing at their own populations who are trying to flee to the south. Also, they are embedded along the routes, and they are using ambulances, sir. They are using ambulances also against any convention of international war laws. They are hijacking ambulances, actually throwing out patients and trying to flee, to use it as vehicles for their own terrorists to flee out of the war zone. We will not accept it. And this is where now it's a matter of do and die. So with all due respect, sir, all the numbers you're citing, they're horrible numbers, but they are irrelevant to the aim and the goals of the war, which is to rid the region from the scourge of the Hamas terrorists. This is the main goal, and we keep our eye on the ball here. And this is not, I would say, incidental that we get the support, full support of the United States of America.
Can I interrupt there, sir? Can I interrupt there? You said this is a do or die war. I accept the definition, but you may have the full support of Western governments. You do not have the full support of their people. And this is the point I want to lead to. The killing of up to nearly 10,000 innocent Palestinian civilians, the injuring of nearly 25,000, the devastation of Gaza has led to protests for the second week running this weekend, when tens of thousands and hundreds of thousands were marching in Washington and London. Washington had the biggest protest to do with Israel, according to the media, in its history. Right? Yes, London has had up to 100,000. Public opinion is turning against you. Aren't you worried that in due course, these governments will start paying more heed to their domestic opinion than they will to Israel's concerns? You could end up losing the support from London and Washington that you have.
So let's drill down into it. The details, the facts do matter. If you look at these hordes of people in London or Washington, who were they? They were Muslims. Many of them are not even voters. Many of them are illegal immigrants.
Come, Mr.
Palestinians. They are incited by Palestinians.
In Washington and New York, it was Jewish Voices for Peace. They took over Grand Central. They took over the Hall of Congress. They were Jewish voices.
Jewish Voices for Peace, in my mind, they are anarchists. They are useful idiots, and they do not matter. But look at the polls. I mean, don't get into some visuals may be very, very misleading. I read the polls every day. The vast majorities of Americans stand right with Israel, Republicans and Democrats alike. If you look at the social media, there are 6-1 attacks on Israel and defending the Palestinians. But this is also an orchestrated campaign by the Palestinian propaganda. So we take it, lightly.
Forgive me, I'm quoting the London Times, not Palestinian propaganda. They had an article yesterday, Sunday, which analyzed the age group of people protesting in support of Palestinians, both in London and in Washington. And it's quite apparent that under a particular age of 50, the protesters side with Palestine. Those over 50, more likely those over 60, side with Israel. And Biden has an election coming up in exactly a year. His Democratic Party is split over this issue. Aren't you worried that if the number of dead continue to rise, and you've already told me, and your words were, the numbers are irrelevant, the aim is more important, you're prepared for any number of deaths to obliterate Hamas. You do that, and you'll end up forcing Biden to move his support away. That's the risk.
Not really. You mentioned quite correctly that at the tender age, there is more support for the Palestinians, not absolute support, but more support. At the older ages, they totally support Israel. What is the conclusion? There is a lot of education to do here. Unfortunately, there is a lot of ignorance among the younger population who doesn't know their history, who do not read the facts. So yes, we have a work cut out for us to
would it not be that they actually do know history? It's not that they don't know history. It's that they do know history. They're aware of everything from Theodor Herzl and the Zionist movement, the Balfour Declaration, 1948 and the Nakba, 1967 and how you refused to abide by the boundaries that were set then, and everything that's happened after the Oslo Accords. It's because they know history that maybe their sympathies lie not with Israel.
No. This is very selective and also very falsified history. If we go back to the Zionism and the Balfour Declaration, you know, Palestine, there was never ever a state by the name of Palestine. Palestine is a Roman name. You go back to the 3rd century of the Emperor Adrian. He wanted to obliterate any connection between the Jews who were here, the indigenous of the land, and who were fighting against the Romans. So he changed the name from Judea to Palestine because of trying to eradicate. By the way, why are the Jews called Jews? Because we are from Judea. Why are the Arabs called Arabs? Because they are from Arabia. They are not from here. Just like the Indians are called Indians because they're from India. So history is quite, I would say, solid. Also, the Balfour Declaration...
Let's come out of history. Let me put another consequence of this determination, which you've stressed 3, 4, 5 times in this interview, and I applaud you for being so upfront and candid about it. But you made it clear that it doesn't matter how many innocent civilians are killed, the target is to obliterate Hamas, and that will be done. One consequence of that is that you will be even more hated in the Middle East than Israel is today. Countries who established relations with you, like Egypt in 79, Jordan in the early 90s, the Abraham Accord countries like the UAE and Bahrain, are now worried because of the protests on their streets.
I'm sorry, but I have to put a mirror, because the mirror image is that what I understand, and I suspect maybe you understand too, but it's not convenient for you to say it out loud, is that all the moderate people in the Middle East, first and foremost, the leadership of the moderate Sunni countries in Saudi Arabia, in the Gulf, and in Jordan and Egypt, they are waiting and praying for the total annihilation of Hamas, because Hamas is their mortal enemy.
So is that why Jordan has withdrawn its ambassador? Is that why Jordan has withdrawn its ambassador? Why Bahrain has withdrawn its ambassador? Is that why when they met with Blinken, the Jordanian and the Egyptian foreign ministers in his presence standing beside him embarrassed him by making it clear a ceasefire immediately, and they don't want to talk about the future.
So maybe I should mention to you one of the first lessons of diplomacy. Diplomacy 101. You say what you need to say in order to protect your home front. And if you have Palestinian in Bahrain, if you have Muslim brotherhoods in Egypt, if you have Hamas cells in Jordan, the leaders cannot talk against it. They have to play a very fine line. So they say what they need to say for their own consumption at home, but they tell us, please, keep us safe. Just do away with all the terrorists of Hamas who are after us. And who is supporting it all? The Ayatollahs in Iran.
But Mr. Ayalon, are you seriously saying that your relations with Jordan, with Bahrain, with Egypt have not been affected? That they have not slid fairly dramatically downwards? 2 of those countries have withdrawn ambassadors. They're all demanding immediate ceasefires. President Xi crystal clear to Blinken, don't claim to be a Jew when you stand beside Netanyahu. I'm quoting the Washington Post. We in Egypt have lived with Jews without a problem. You are inflicting Europe's guilt on us. Don't do it. Those are sentiments being expressed by an Egyptian president. The withdrawal of ambassadors by Jordan and Bahrain clearly suggests to the world major strains have come to place between Tel Aviv, Cairo, and Amman. You're saying that isn't true.
The withdrawal of ambassadors is grandstanding, and I do not criticize. They have their own opposition at home. They have a risk to their own regimes by the Ayatollahs and by the ISIS-type Hamas. I don't blame them. But is this more important than continuing to buy from Israel technology? They keep buying from Israel technology. They are still keeping trade missions, and they're still thinking together with us on a coalition led by the United States how to stop the Iranians' proxies, whether it's Hezbollah or the Houthis in Yemen. Who are the Houthis in Yemen attacking? They're attacking Saudis. They're attacking people in the Gulf. Who is Hezbollah attacking? They're attacking Christians and Sunnis in Lebanon as well. The same thing goes with the militias, the Iranian militias in Syria and in Iraq. Who are they attacking? They are attacking Americans and allied forces. We have to understand we are now in kind of a world war. On the one hand, you have the Western democracies, you have the democracies like India, which is a great democracy, and on the other hand, you have backward dictatorships.
My last question,
like Iran, and who are they backed by?
My last question, because I said my last question because you briefly froze and I wasn't sure we'd lost the connection. But my last quick issue, Secretary of State Blinken, as we speak, is in Ankara, where according to both the BBC and Al Jazeera, he's had a very cold reception. He may not even get to meet the Turkish president, and certainly there will be no press conference after he's met the foreign minister. Before that, he has been rebuffed by your prime minister. He came asking for a humanitarian pause. Your prime minister has made it clear there will not be one until the hostages are released. Then he went to Amman to meet the Jordanian and Egyptian foreign ministers. They embarrassed him because in his company, they demanded an immediate ceasefire. And again, in his company, they made clear they were not prepared to talk about a long-term solution at this stage. So wherever he's going, Secretary of State Blinken is not getting receptive ears listening to him. He's being repeatedly rebuffed. What is going to be the outcome of this shuttle mission?
Well, you see the secretary rebuffed by Turks, not by Israelis. He was very much warmly welcomed here. Actually, he participated, just like Roosevelt and his people in World War II participated in London war cabinet against the Nazis. We welcomed Blinken and he participated. He sat on the meeting of our war cabinet. And look what happens on the ground. The Ohio nuclear submarine is joining the two fleets that are already here that the United States sent, the Eisenhower air carrier group and the Ford. This is where the Americans are. They understand where their interests are. They understand where our values are. And this is why they are squarely, and they'll continue to be squarely behind Israel, no matter what.
Mr. Ayalon, let me tell you why I specifically use the word rebuff for the way Mr. Netanyahu responded to Mr. Blinken. First, because the BBC repeatedly has used that word, so have other channels and newspapers. Secondly, and more importantly, Blinken made it clear before he arrived in Tel Aviv that he was looking for a humanitarian pause. And if I'm right, President Biden said much the same thing too. And what happened as soon as that meeting with Netanyahu was over? Netanyahu held a press conference to make clear that there would be no humanitarian pause, and also said there couldn't be one considered. His words were, it isn't in the lexicon. There couldn't be one considered until the hostages were released. That is a rebuff. And then the same thing happened in Iran, which is why I ask, is this a futile mission that is not going to lead to any cessation of the conflict?
No, quite the contrary. I think that the Americans have shown the right leadership, and they actually are galvanizing the coalition of the moderate forces in the region against the Islamist jihadists and Iran. Actually, what is very much of concern to Biden and to the Americans is the release of all the hostages, as dozens of them are American hostages. So it's very much we are on the same page. Yes, humanitarian for humanitarian. You know that the Red Cross have not even been allowed to visit.
Mr. Ayalon, if you believe and you insist that this is not an exercise in futility by Blinken, then tell me, what do you think he's likely to achieve? Because I believe after Ankara, he goes to Qatar. And presumably after that, a very tired and exhausted Secretary of State will head home to Washington to go to bed. So what will he have achieved?
Oh, he achieved a great deal of deterrence. What the main concern of the Americans right now is not to enlarge the war and not have Hezbollah and Iran come in. And this he has achieved. Hezbollah and Iran are very much deterred. And this was the main goal. So he can go home.
Would you really believe that was the message given by Sheikh Hassan Nasrallah when he spoke on Friday, that they will not further intervene? I know and I accept that he actually also claimed, and this may not be true, but he claimed it, that Hezbollah had done an awful lot to ensure that a very large section of Israel's army was now pointing towards Lebanon and therefore deflected from Gaza. Those were claims that people found hard to believe, but he made them. But he also said that there could be more to happen and that Hezbollah would wait and see what happened. Last night, according to the BBC, Israel inflicted its heaviest airstrike on Gaza, a great escalation of the past. If that continues, don't you think Hezbollah will intervene on the side of Hamas and on the side of the Palestinians?
Hezbollah and Iran are Shiites. For them, Sunnis and especially Palestinians are expendable. Iran will fight until the last Palestinian. They are not involved directly. Later on, they will fight until the last Lebanese, Hezbollah. Iranians are not fighting in. They will fight till the last Yemenite Houthis in Yemen. They are not risking their own lives. This is the picture. This is the lay of the land right now.
So
yes.
The picture and image you leave us with, and this is my last question, is though you began by saying you've only scraped the surface, there's a lot more to do. You've also said that the mission is to eliminate Hamas and its leadership, and no matter what the cost in terms of individual civilian lives, that is a cost that has to be incurred. It doesn't matter. What matters is eliminating Hamas. But beyond all of that, you're also saying, as a former deputy foreign minister, you're satisfied with the progress Israel's made, even though it's slow, incremental, and so far, as you said, only scraping the surface. You are not worried by the situation today. You think it's moving in the right direction.
Simply, yes. And simply because we are fighting for our lives, we're fighting for our existence, and don't make any mistake, for the future of humanity as a whole. This is where the dividing line is. This is where the evil has to be rooted out, just like in Ukraine, just like in the Houthis in Yemen, and just like the militias in Iraq and Syria. And by the way, they're also moving into Africa. You have Boko Haram. It's a global war. And yes, Israel is at the front line, but we're fighting for all peace-loving people, for all those who really want good future and understanding and peace among the nations for all.
Mr. Ayalon, I want to thank you profusely for not just agreeing to this interview, but answering all my questions. At a time of war, to be challenged in the way I did cannot be easy. And I will add something else, even if it's a bit unjournalistically for me to do so. I hope politicians in my country have watched how you handled my questions. They should learn from you. I thank you for the openness with which you accepted tough questioning. Thank you very much.
You just now received my second agreement, or my next agreement for your next interview. Whenever you ask, it is my pleasure. And I know that the answers may not be sometimes as pleasant, but the truth not always is pleasant. But I appreciate your probing. I think you have made a very, very intelligent inquiries into what's happening. And I will be here again if you would wish that.
I will definitely wish that, and I will be knocking on your door very soon. Thank you very much indeed. Stay safe.
Thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Karan Thapar. Over the last few years, I hope you've been watching my program, The Interview on the Wire. During that period, I've interviewed doctors, politicians, businessmen, scientists, authors, and even the occasional Nobel laureate. For me, it's been exciting. I hope it's been enjoyable for you. But these, as you know, are tough times, and if this program is going to remain bold, independent, and sometimes even defiant, then I think we need your support. At the end of the day, it's a truism, but editorial independence is best defended by the viewers. So if you would like this program to remain the way it is, forthright, outspoken, and interesting, then would you consider supporting us? All you have to do is to click on the description at the bottom. But more than anything else, I hope you will continue to watch the interview. Your viewership means an awful lot to me.